Today I want to talk to you about threading machines that do not have thread break sensors on them. So this would be things like my model year 19 Lucy that I'm going to be demoing on today, or any legacy machine that doesn't have an onboard thread break sensor or doesn't have quill path on it, so it doesn't have a add-on thread break sensor. So we're going to start out by introducing our new friend, Mr. Pointer. Mr. Pointer was given to me by Jennifer. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And she wanted to make sure that you guys could see where I was pointing. So we're going to start out back here on the back of the machine. So starting on the back of the machine, you have your cone holder, and right over your cone holder, you have a thread guide. The bottom of this thread guide needs to be pretty much over the pin of your cone holder. So you want those to be aligned together to make it the easiest that you can for the thread to come up through that guide. So we see them in all different areas up here when we're doing work on machine. The goal is to get the bottom of the thread guide right over the pin. Then you're going to come up and through your thread guide. If you're using batting, you would put the batting down on top of the thread. And we're going to be talking a little bit more when we talk about threads, when you might use batting up in this thread guide, and when you might not need it. But it's okay to use the batting or not use the batting. You're going to use whatever is going to make your life easier at that moment. Halfway up your machine, you have a 3-hole guide. Right? Your 3-hole guide, when you don't have a thread cutter, is just a pass through. So you're going to go through any one of the 3 holes. I will typically just go through the bottom one, but you're going to go through any one of them, and you just want to put the thread from the back side through to the front. The 3-hole guide that's right above the tensioner needs to be sitting at an angle. So you want to make sure that it does turn. If I actually put my fingers on it, I can turn it. So you want it to be at an angle, and it's the same exact 3-hole guide that you saw on the center of the machine. So what we're going to do is start wrapping this. I am showing you how to thread something when you are using poly thread. So any polyester thread, I'm going to wrap them into my holes. So I'm going to take it from the bottom to the top, grab that thread, right? That's the first stitch. Then I'm going to wrap around. So come out towards me and then wrap through from the back to the front of the guide again. And grab that thread. It's a little hard to do from the position I'm in. It's a lot easier if you're standing next to the machine. And then the third time I'm going to do it again and go from the back to the front again. So when we're talking about doing wrapping around the guide, how do you have your guides wrapped, right? This is what we're trying to say. How many wraps are around the guide? When you're using a poly thread, most of the time you're going to have 3 wraps, 1 for each hole. If you were using cotton thread, I would be coming straight in from the back to the front on the first one, and then coming back down through the last hole. So I'd be making a big running stitch across my guide for cotton threads. Different threads, you thread this different ways. This is pre-tensioning your thread. So it's putting a little bit of tension on your thread to start out with. So we can use our tensioner as a finesse tool instead of like a hammer or, a sledge. So I'm going to put my thread between the symbols and either hold both ends of the threads and pull it in, or just separate the symbols and get them all the way down against the shaft. The center of this knob is the shaft for my tensioner. And then I'm going to bring my thread up and make sure that I hook it in this little spring here, and that the spring is going up and down from about 9 o'clock down to about 7 o'clock is typically what we see the spring on that. I'm going to go under the shepherd's hook, and I'm going to go through the uptake lever. Okay, and when I'm pulling this, I can tell that the tension is too tight on my thread already. So I need to loosen my tension. And we're going to talk about this a lot when we start talking about how to set your tension on your machine. But this is a split shaft on our tensioner. Normally, your good tension is going to be somewhere where the shaft is equal to the knob. So if I sit here and turn this a whole bunch of times, counterclockwise, it's almost flush. Now it's flush. I should get pretty good tension at this position, and then really great tension within 2 full rotations plus or minus that position. So if you've got it threaded this way, or the way I'm showing you, then your tensioner should be pretty close to even with the shaft when the tensioner is new. So I told you the tension was too tight for a second ago, and I'm pulling it now. I know how the tension should feel when it's going through my guides. And I should feel resistance to the thread, but it shouldn't be hard to pull. When I was pulling it earlier, I had to put a lot of force down to get the thread to pull through from my cone. That is something you are going to learn over time, how it should feel when the tension is right. Behind your handle right here, there's a pigtail that you need to make sure that you thread. And once you have that one threaded, you are going to thread the one that's above the eye too. I want to show you how to thread a pigtail real quick though. So if you put your thread across the pigtail, then you're going to wrap one side of your thread up and around the part that sticks out. At this point, my pigtail's threaded. So the last thing I need to do is thread my needle. So I'm going to take my thread and stick it through the eye of the needle. So when you're going to load a needle, there is a groove that runs all the way down the needle, and you saw my thread just get caught in it. As soon as my thread is in that groove, all I have to do is drop down and get it in the eye like I just have it. Then I need to grab something like a pair of snips, and grab the needle from the back of the eye. The last thing you need to do is to hold the tail of your top thread and do a needle down, needle up, so that your thread comes up or attaches to the bottom thread. Then I'm going to take my scissors and go underneath the foot of my machine. When I do that, I can actually grab the bobbin thread too. They're both lime green. It's a little bit hard to tell, but this thread right here, this loop, is the bobbin thread. By grabbing the bobbin thread, that puts my top thread through the actual hopping foot and underneath it. So the idea is to get both of them above the plate and through and underneath the hopping foot.